What is going on, Notre Dame football fans, and welcome into another Notre Dame six-pack show here at Blue and Gold, where we take 6 Notre Dame topics and have 6 minutes to discuss each of them. Excited for this show. This is for the diehards, as I keep saying. It's the dog days of February. We still have Notre Dame football to discuss, and thank you all for tuning in. Please do hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the Blue and Gold YouTube channel for more content. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, thank you very much. Please leave us a 5-star review wherever you do listen to your podcast. Change the game with Roac, a proud partner of Blue and Gold. Get the best fit and best feel with Robac's incredibly comfortable activewear, from polos and quarter zips to shorts and Delta to performance pants. You will look good and feel good with Robac. Use promo code BlueGold20. That's all one word, BlueGold20 for 20% off your first purchase at Robac. Boys, I do trust that you're well, so we will skip the pleasantries and dive into this week's show. First up, spring priorities. Eric Hansen did an article talking about 6 spring priorities that will shape Notre Dame's football title push. I'm sure you guys read that article. What are your takes, Jack? What is I don't know how you guys want to take this, but yeah, some spring priorities for the Irish this fall. This spring.
Spring priorities this fall. Got it, Mike.
I know. Struggling.
It's the offseason for everyone. No, my number one spring priority is actually something that Eric mentioned in his article, and that is finding a nickel. We're not going to get a complete picture of the Notre Dame secondary this spring because DJ McKinney, the transfer cornerback from Colorado, he doesn't enroll until June. So take what they line up as with a grain of salt, just like we did with Malachi Fields last season at wide receiver. But Notre Dame will need to cross-train some guys at nickel this year, whether that's Christian Gray, whether that's one of the rising sophomores, Mark Zachary or Jaden Sanders. We already know Dallas Golden can play nickel, and in my opinion, he played it quite well, especially for a true freshman last year. But we don't know, A, who's going to be behind him, or B, who could potentially displace him for that spot. So whoever Notre Dame cross-trains that position, that's one of the things I'm most interested to see this spring.
Yeah, my top thing on the to-do list is also something that Eric got a little bit into, and we'll probably get a little bit into later on in this show with one of the other topics that you see there on the rundown. But it's kind of getting some cohesion, some chemistry, some whatever you want to call it going with the new hires on the defensive side of the ball, because like it or not, we could talk about how great these hires were, and Notre Dame did what it had to do to replace some of the top-end guys on the assistant coaching staff, but you don't really know what that looks like until you go through practices with these new coaches and you kind of mesh their coaching styles. And, some of these guys are going to be asking the players to do different things than Mike Mickens did, than Max Bulla did. So once you're out there, helmets on, eventually pads on, the blue goal game, glorified scrimmage, whatever you want to call it, but like within the confines of these 15 sessions that Notre Dame's going to have to actually play some football and not just work out and run and lift weights, but, snap the ball and see what you've got 11 on 11. Notre Dame needs to be on the same page on the defensive side of the ball, top down. That starts with the coaches, because I do think in this era that Notre Dame is in right now, where every single year it's going to be talked about as a national title contender, and we're going to get into a little bit of that as well. You've got to be sound on the defensive side of the ball, and Notre Dame has 3 new coaches. So with that comes some trying to get on the same page type of things.
You mentioned cohesion. I actually thought you were going to go in a different direction, so I will go in that direction right now. Cohesion between CJ Carr and his wide receivers. We're going to talk about both later on the show, but it's an interesting situation, right? Because last year, Notre Dame had to split its QB1 reps 3 ways, and Malachi Fields wasn't there yet, and Jordan Faison was kind of in and out as he was still playing lacrosse. Jaden Greathouse was also in and out because he was resting after the CFP run. 2 years ago, Riley Leonard wasn't practicing during spring practice. Bo Collins wasn't there yet. And Jordan Faison was very much not doing football. He was all in on lacrosse that spring. So the quarterback receiver connection really couldn't get going the past 2 years until the summer. That's not going to be the case this spring. Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter, Jay Greathouse, Jordan Faison, who I think we both expect right now, obviously things can change, to be that top 4 that CJ Carr is going to throw to. We expect all of them to be ready to go, fully committed to football. Faison not playing lacrosse anymore. Porter and Graham are here right now. We're actually going to talk to them tomorrow, so that's something to look forward to. on blueandgold.com. And they're going to get all their first team reps with CJ Carr. That's the nice thing about having an unquestioned starter heading into the season. It's again something we're going to be talking about the next 6 minutes after this timer is up. But the nice thing about having Carr as the unquestioned starter, no one is there to take his reps as much as you would like to have Kenny Minchey still there as a reliable backup. CJ is going to get all the reps in spring practice. That's going to be critical time for building that chemistry with his wide receivers.
Not as important, because I do agree with you. Now that you have a starter, invest in him in this offseason as much as you can, because yes, we saw very good CJ Carr and great at times, but let's see maybe one of the best quarterbacks in college football, CJ Carr. And to do that, you've got to have him on the same page with the wide receivers, have him doing all the big things, the little things, and everything in between in practice. But I'm going to spin this one more way, and then I'll give you 30 seconds to maybe spit out some whatever things you have left over. Let's have Notre Dame kind of knowing where it wants to go with the backup quarterback situation, because I think everyone thinks it could be anyone from Blake Hebert to Noah Grubbs and even Teddy Gerard coming in over the summer. So in the next month and a half, I want Notre Dame to have a pretty good feel of, yeah, that guy's probably going to be the one backing up CJ Carr, whether it is Grubbs or Hebert. I don't care who it is, but be looking at that race as well.
You would like to know between the two of them which one is going to wind up competing with Teddy Gerard. Obviously, there's a scenario where Teddy Gerard comes in, he's not ready, and it's whoever wins the spring competition. But you would like to go into the fall with a pretty good idea if it's going to be Grubbs or Hebert, which one of them is going to be. Or you could also have a scenario like last year's starting quarterback competition where it was so close that you didn't really know until the really tail end of fall camp. But I think it's also worth noting that was rare how good really all three of Notre Dame's quarterbacks were. The far more likely scenario with a too close to call competition is that when neither of them are good enough. So you would like to know which one is going to be your presumptive backup heading into the fall.
Let's stick with the quarterback discussion. J.D. Pickell and Ari Wasserman of On3 put out their top 10 quarterback lists going into the season. He had J.D. Pickell had Carr at 6, and in order from 1 to 5, Dante Moore, Julian Saint, Arch Manning, Brendan Sorsby, and Josh Hoover. Ari Wasserman had Carr down at number 10. Guys, that Ari did not gain many Notre Dame fans. Last year when he was campaigning against the Irish a lot, or more so campaigning for Miami over Notre Dame, but in the way that he did that. But yeah, what do you guys think? Where would you have Notre Dame quarterback CJ Carr on a top 10 list like that? Start with Tyler.
I hate doing these rankings because flat out I don't know enough about some of these other quarterbacks to say CJ Carr is definitively better than that guy. But as a college football connoisseur, somebody who covers college football, all of those things, just sitting here right now, it's very hard for me to say, oh yeah, there's definitely 9 quarterbacks better than CJ Carr in college football. So I think he's a top 5 quarterback. I think when you see his name up there, 2, 3, whatever it is for Heisman Trophy odds, that's warranted. But then you have to take that with a grain of salt too, because the guy that's at the top right now in that regard, Arch Manning, was nowhere near winning the Heisman Trophy last season. So things can crash and burn and fall apart in your control, out of your control, all of those different things. But just knowing what I know about CJ Carr, the touchdown interception ratio, he had a pretty good completion percentage. The yards per attempt was top 5 in college football. The passer rating was the best that Notre Dame has ever seen. Jack, for me, it's when you point to any little statistic, it was, oh, he's good at that. Oh, he's good at that. He can do all of the things, and that was his first year as a starter. So I do think he's a top 5 quarterback in college football, but once you start to ask me, is he better than that guy or is that guy better than him? I don't know. You're splitting hairs sometimes, so I'm not going to put a definitive number on it.
Right, you are splitting hairs, and obviously all these are good quarterbacks. I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little bit. I actually talked to Ari a little bit last week about his quarterback rankings. I wasn't trying to grill him about CJ Carr being 10th or anything, because I know how much he and pretty much everyone else hate doing those, just because all you do if you're in Ari's position is you get yelled at no matter who you put 1 through 10. But I was curious and I want to talk to JD as well. I was curious just to see where or how CJ is viewed nationally, because obviously every fan base and every beat writer sphere has a little bit of a bubble, right? We watch CJ Carr far more than these other quarterbacks, and I was curious to see like how CJ is viewed nationally. The positives, everyone knows he's. I believe the phrase Ari used was obscenely accurate. He was very efficient. His efficiency numbers are fantastic, whether it be yards per attempt or pass efficiency rating. Generally projected the ball well. Obviously had some blips in that area, but when you talk about the turnover worthy play percentages, it was pretty good in that area, as well as his big time throw percentages. So all the rates and efficiency numbers and the film, all great. What people would like to see and what they didn't see from CJ, and maybe this is just like, oh, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price were so great that they're not giving CJ the benefit of the doubt with this area, but they would like to see him be the guy carrying the offense this year, and that's something that pretty much all the quarterbacks ahead of Carr had to do more than Carr in 2025, because like you look at a lot of CJ's best plays that he had stacked boxes and had to hit throws over the top against one-on-one coverage more than most quarterbacks. And to his everlasting credit, he did that. But I think a lot of national analysts want to see him want to see him succeed when he's the guy everyone is when he's the number one guy everyone is trying to stop, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense, and I'm of the thinking that it's not something that Carr couldn't do last year. It's something that he didn't need to do last year because
100%, yeah,
of Jeremiah Love. So, but he does have to prove it to us. And I think if you're an objective media type, which is what I assume that, the people that you were talking to are, then they're coming at it from the right angle and saying, yeah, he had the luxury of a Heisman Trophy finalist running back, and he could just give it to that guy. And oh, by the way, the other running back is the second best tailback in the upcoming NFL draft, and all of these things. So it's a huge year for him in that regard, because he is the guy. He is the face of this Notre Dame offense now. Like, you like the receiver transfers that came in. They're coming in from a powerhouse program, those types of things, but they haven't done it at this level. Carr has started for 12 games. He loses Jeremiah Love to the NFL. There's good players around him, maybe even great players around him, but he has a chance to be the greatest player on this Notre Dame offense. And if he is, then I think Ari Wasserman's going to have to eat some crow. And just like Andy Staples did last year, I forget exactly what his quarterback ranking was going into the 2025 season, but it was way off. And he owned that. And he said, I was wrong. CJ Carr definitely has a chance to make Ari Wasserman say, hey, I was wrong. He's not the 10th best quarterback in college football. He's more like 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 1.
To give guys like Andy and Ari some grace last year, it was a really, really hard year to rank quarterbacks this time of year, just because there were so few proven top talents around. There are many more of those this year. For me personally, like I just spent 2 minutes playing devil's advocate, so I just want to say where I personally stand. I would have Carr anywhere in that top 4 with more say and Manning. I fully buy that he can take that leap, especially with we'll talk about this in the next 6 minutes, with the full offseason as the number 1 quarterback to really refine some of what he needs to prove in 2026.
I think the point that Jack made at the top was that, like, as a Notre Dame community, we watch Carr a lot, and we maybe don't watch some of the other guys. Like, are you that familiar with Josh Hoover coming over from TCU, Indiana's new quarterback? Are you that familiar with, Sam Leavitt, the LSU's new quarterback? It's kind of one of those things. But also, I think Carr should be in the top 5, at least top 6. Okay, so around this time last year, there's a lot of like, all right, Jeremiah Love for Heisman. I personally, Horka, you might remember this, talking to you after a show or a video that we did. I was like, dude, I don't think he's going to be a Heisman finalist. I just don't think he's going to get the volume to get there. He's super talented. I didn't think that. Horka, like, feel like all off season last year, you really were, beating that drum. And Love was a Heisman finalist. He did make it to New York. So let's now shift the discussion. Could Notre Dame have CJ Carr invited to New York and maybe win the damn thing? I don't know how much we've talked about like the Heisman odds and where Carr sits for that. But Tyler, you wrote an article last week saying that Carr can learn from Fernando Mendoza. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, just win your games. That's what Fernando Mendoza did at Indiana last year, and he ended up winning the Heisman Trophy because of it. And I think he was maybe and now look, I know Diego Pavia ended up getting second, and Julian Sayin got fourth, so it wasn't maybe exactly the way I'm about to lay it out, but Julian Sayin could have went off in that Big Ten title game, 4 or 5 touchdowns, and he might have won the dang thing. Or Fernando Mendoza could have lost to Dante Moore at Oregon, or, could have lost the Penn State game that was really close and not had those moments in the end. Because I think Jack, who ended up voting for Fernando Mendoza to win the Heisman Trophy, pointed to some of those games where he was like, when Indiana needed him, he did the dang thing. He won the dang game. So for CJ Carr, I think you go 12-0 with this Notre Dame schedule and be a step up as we expect from who he was last year. And he's going to be right there for this thing. He has the benefit of people already talking about him because, Mike, you mentioned the odds. He's top 5 everywhere you look. DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever. He's among the favorites to win this thing. So what he's expected to do is to win all of his games. And could he win it with a 10-2, 11-1 record? Yeah, but he would have to have astronomical stats. Jack, I'm of the thinking that if Notre Dame went 12-0 last year and CJ Carr had like 6 more touchdown passes and he was in that 30 range right there with Mendoza and right there with Sayin, people would have been talking about, is it Jeremiah Love or is it CJ Carr, Notre Dame's best player and Notre Dame's Heisman candidate? So for me, win your games like Mendoza did. Be big in big moments if you have to. The schedule is not great for Notre Dame, but there's a couple chances for him to have moments. And if he does, then yeah, I think we're talking about a potential Heisman Trophy candidate in November, December.
Right. He has a key advantage that Jeremiah Love did not, in that he has an opportunity for a Heisman moment in November. It's going to be November 7th. Miami is in town at Notre Dame. There are a lot of really good college football games that day. I'm not going to remember the specifics. I just know that it's a really stacked day of college football on November 7th. But that's going to be NBC most likely prime time. I've seen no way Notre Dame schedules that game for any time, but 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Carr is going to be going up against Darian Mensah, who's quite possibly another Heisman candidate. If you look at the early odds, the early quarterback rankings, which we just talked about, that's going to be his opportunity for a Heisman moment. I think he won his games. You touched on this a little bit, but like, he won his games is I think an oversimplification of Fernando Mendoza's Heisman case last year, because it wasn't just he won his games. It was he was the reason his team won a lot of those big games. Like the Ohio State game, yes, he scored 13 points. The throws he made in key moments, both in the fourth quarter and on key downs, like that was the difference between Indiana winning and losing that game. He was the difference between Indiana winning and losing at Penn State. Carr's got to be that for Notre Dame. Like, as good as Carr was against Miami last year, particularly given the lens that it was his first start, I mean, they didn't win that game. Carr had the ball with an opportunity to win. He didn't really have a chance to win because his offensive line failed him, but didn't happen. It's got to happen for him this year for him to win that Heisman Trophy. And at that point, like, I think everyone is past the point where volume stats really matter all that much for a quarterback. I think we saw that with the Mendoza versus Pavia debate. Like, we all know that Carr is not going to play the fourth quarter for most of Notre Dame's schedule. That's just a fact. If Notre Dame is as good as we think they're going to be. So I wouldn't look at touchdowns or yards or any of that.
I think you do look at touchdowns because, and you look at the wins as well. The comp that I'm making with Mendoza is they were close to losing a couple games. And if they did, then all of a sudden you're looking at, okay, why are we going to give it to Mendoza over Diego Pavia, who went 10-2 and had astronomical stats, or Julian Sayin, who was right there with Mendoza statistically as a passer, and the only game that he lost was to Mendoza. And it's hand in hand with what you're saying too. Just 'cause, like, you don't have to have that hypothetical because Mendoza was the guy. He was the one making the plays, and he won the games in the end. But if he didn't, all of a sudden you lose that tiebreaker of being 13-0, I guess, at the time of the award being given out. If Mendoza's sitting there at 12-1 or 11-2, then I think you bring the other guys into the conversation, and it's like Pavia might have gotten more votes, or even Sayin might have gotten more votes if he was the Big Ten champion. So for CJ Carr, I'm going to say it again, go 12-0. If you go 12-0, your chances of winning this thing are a lot higher than if you're 11-1 or 10-2. That's just the Notre Dame thing. Like you've got to be that top team for people to be like, okay, we respect you, right or wrong.
For Notre Dame to go 12-0, they're going to need some help from the defense, of course. And, I have up on the screen Chris Ash confidence. So, I don't have many characters to work with there, but the gist of the discussion being, Jack, you think that Marcus Freeman and the hires that Notre Dame made signaled confidence internally in Chris Ash. So talk to us about that.
100%. We might have talked about this in a previous show when we talked about the coaching hires, but Notre Dame went with a Chris Ash guy, like the Chris Ash guy, probably Chris Ash's best friend in the business, looking at it from an outside perspective, in Charlie Partridge to coach defensive line. Someone Chris Ash coached as a player at Wisconsin, and Aaron Henry, and then gave his first full-time coaching job at Rutgers to coach defensive backs. Brian Jean-Marie, I don't think we've really figured out what the connection to the coaching staff there is quite yet, but that's 2 out of 3 hires with an obvious Chris Ash connection, 0 out of 3 hires with an obvious Marcus Freeman connection. That is trust in a coordinator. Frankly, I don't know that Marcus Freeman has really had with anyone else at Notre Dame at this point. Like I know Mike Denbrock brought in, and I don't really know if Mike Denbrock has had the opportunity to make a ton of hires. I think it's just Jawan Sider as a position coach. I know he brought in a couple analysts that he'd worked with closely before. Trent Miles is the name that comes to mind. But when it came to the running backs coach, like went out and got a guy where the connection was Marcus Freeman. And I'm not implying by any means that Marcus Freeman doesn't have trust in Mike Denbrock, because of course he does. But the amount of trust that he gave Chris Ash to build out this staff is not something we've seen Marcus Freeman do with the coordinator yet at Notre Dame.
What I like is the consistency too, because it's not like Marcus Freeman woke up one day in the offseason here and was like, you know what? Yeah, Chris Ash, he's my guy. I'm going to let him, have a lot of say in these hires. If you go back to when nobody had confidence in Chris Ash, except for Mike Singer and a select few others, Marcus Freeman got up in front of us in the media and had to answer some really tough questions about Chris Ash. And the whole time he just told us, I like what we're doing. I like where we're going to get to. Chris Ash is the guy. This is me paraphrasing and even putting words in Marcus's mouth a little bit, but that's what he was telling us was, no, we hired Chris Ash for a reason, and this is not a one-off. Like, he's going to be our guy. Sure enough, Jack, we're seeing these hires. It's, yeah, this guy played for Chris Ash, so we're gonna hire him. This guy coached with Chris Ash, so we're gonna hire him. I think Chris Ash likes where he's at Notre Dame. It was not a one-off for him either. He wasn't looking to go to Notre Dame and be like, let's see what I can turn this 1 year into. He eventually got to a point where he was coaching really good football. Notre Dame was playing really good defensive football, and I think it's something that you can build off of. And now Notre Dame gets to build off of hires that scream, yeah, Chris Ash was the main instigator in bringing this guy to South Bend. So a little bit on the cohesion and chemistry thing that I talked to at the beginning, I think it's going to be all the more easier for Ash to find that, because these are guys that he knows and has worked with and has coached before. So I like the direction that Notre Dame is going on that side of the ball. It's been in good hands with Marcus Freeman ever since he became defensive coordinator in 2021, but it's had to go through some waves and some ups and downs. In the beginning of last year was a down, but I mean, it's up again, and it seems like it's going to be up for hopefully all of 2026 if you're an Irish fan and you don't have to go through that little lull again. But Chris Ash is more set in stone than he was at this time last year or September of last year as well. So I think it's in a really, really good spot. And I agree with you that all the confidence in the world is in Chris Ash from Marcus Freeman's side.
Well, it wasn't just, I like Chris Ash. I hired Chris Ash for a reason. When Marcus Freeman had to face tough questions about the defense, it was, I like what I'm seeing from Chris Ash right now. He liked the way he was leading. He liked the way he was responding to, all the internal and external criticism about his leadership to that point. And he liked what he saw in him turning the defense around. And I think as reporters at that time, it was our job to be skeptical about that, because any coach can say, I like what I'm seeing from the coach who is on my staff right now. In a public setting. But to Marcus Freeman and Chris Ash's everlasting credit, like they proved that when they turned the defense around, and there were a ton of conspiracy theories all of last year that Marcus Freeman's actually calling the defense now. Marcus Freeman is somehow setting the coverages while Chris Ash sets the rush package, and yeah, was Marcus Freeman a little more involved in the defensive meeting room than he would have been if Notre Dame started 2-0 and allowed 7 points per game? Probably, but this was a Chris Ash led defensive turnaround, and I think you are seeing proof of that in Notre Dame's actions throughout the offseason and filling out the coaching staff.
Yeah, going off of that, when Freeman would talk about the situation and how things needed to get better, he pretty much told us, I like what Chris Ash is doing in the meeting rooms right now, self-evaluating himself, meeting with players, coaching the players, saying, hey, these are the tweaks that we're going to make. Like, it was all the confidence in the world in him to do the things that needed to be done to get Notre Dame turned around. And that's what you're seeing now is like, it was almost like not really a test, but Chris Ash had to prove in that moment, okay, world is crashing down. Let me show everyone that I'm the guy. He did. And now, of course, in February, all these months later, we're going to be saying he's the guy because he did the thing. And now he gets to keep doing the thing.
It's transition talking back to the offensive side of the ball. You guys kind of alluded to this earlier that we would discuss the wide receivers and obviously, you guys talk about Carr and, how he's, Notre Dame as their first returning quarterback in several years, going back to Ian Book. So just how good can this receiver group be? I think it was Tyler James wrote about this, Jack. So I'll give you the floor.
Tyler James did a column about Tyler James did a column about like how it's on the wide receivers right now to raise this offensive ceiling, and that's kind of goes off what we talked about with Carr, and that it's probably going to have to be the passing game that elevates the offense. I'm skeptical of how much the run game will regress without Bryson Love, because I think the offensive line, if it's healthy, will be better. So I think they'll still get plenty from the run game, but the star power right now is going to come from A, the offensive line if it's healthy, and B, the passing game, and that's going to be CJ Carr and the wide receivers. As far as the players specifically, I think this group has a really good floor. I think you know exactly what you're going to get from Jordan Faison, if not more than that, because he's fully committed to football all spring. We saw the leap that he took last year when he was partially committed to football in the spring, as opposed to not committed to football at all during the spring the year before that. So I'm excited to see what we get from him. I'm excited to see the bounce back season that Jaden Greathouse can put together. I think from everything we've heard and from everything Notre Dame has told us publicly, I don't think they've stopped believing in him after a down season. And then the Ohio State transfers, it's hard not to be excited about them and the upside that they bring, not just from their recruiting pedigree, but in the flashes that they showed in Crimson and Gray. So to answer to kind of summarize that long answer into a short one, I think this group has a really nice combination of floor and ceiling, but how close to that ceiling they get could really determine a lot of what Notre Dame can accomplish this season.
I'm honestly a little bit worried about the returning production, and I'll say that from a standpoint of last year you went out and got Malachi Fields and Will Pauling, who you pretty much knew were going to be good. Sure enough, they were. Scored touchdowns, got catches, first downs, like all of those things. This year, your wide receiver transfers are a little less proven. And we've talking about like the potential versus production thing. And the former can easily turn into the latter. Like you don't have to have the former. The latter can come just by way of these guys being really, really talented. And Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham are. But it has to happen for them. Like they have to be good football players this year for Notre Dame to have the wide receiver core that they think they're going to have. Like Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham are both two deep guys. Porter might even be a starter over Micah Gilbert and Cam Williams. We're just going to have to see. And then Graham, I think, is going to play a lot. He might not start a game all year, but he's going to be in there. So they have to produce, and they are not guys like Field and Pauling who came in and had produced before. Greathouse is interesting to me because I think maybe he finally has the season where it all comes together. If you think of his career, it's been really weird and wacky with the couple hamstring injuries. And then even when he is healthy in the first 4 games last year, CJ Carr starting for the first time in his career, and he's trying to figure out where to go with the football and those things. The 2023 passing offense, when Greathouse was a true freshman, that thing was just broken in the beginning with Sam Hartman, except for against Navy, obviously, and some of those easier teams at the beginning. But like they never really found what they were looking for with Sam Hartman, and it wasn't exactly Sam Hartman's fault, but like it never came together. So that's what I'm saying with Greathouse. Hopefully it all comes together for him and he is a guy, because I think that raises the ceiling of this. Like if he can be the guy that we've all thought that he could be more consistently, then that's huge. Because I think Jordan Faison is exactly that. He is consistent. You know what you're going to get from him. So once you start adding up the pieces, you're like, you see the vision. It's, okay, yeah, he can do this. And if he does that, then we're going to be good. And the two Ohio State guys, yada, yada. But, Jack, like it literally all has to come together. Otherwise, we might be sitting there going, man, if only Notre Dame had a really good wide receiver room. And with CJ Carr maybe being in his last year at Notre Dame, that's the last thing that you want to be saying September of next year or later this year.
I'm with you that there's downside risk, but I don't think it's as much as you think, because like obviously the transfers are less proven than they were last year, but the returners are more proven. Like we know a lot more about Jordan Faison than we knew when Notre Dame acquired Malachi Fields and Will Pauling. We even know more about Greathouse than we knew when that happened, because they got Fields and Pauling before the college football playoff breakout. Like they could, I don't know what they expected from Greathouse at that time, but it certainly elevated once the Penn State and Ohio State games happened. Obviously, you had the down year, to put it mildly, in 2025. But I think the coaching staff still believes in what he can accomplish, and regardless, he's a veteran player who's played a lot of football at Notre Dame. So generally speaking, you know what you're going to get from him, if not from production, then from quality of play. So that gives you a pretty good baseline, in my opinion. And you got not only Graham and Porter, but you have the Micah Gilberts and Cam Williams and Elijah Burses of the world, the Logan Saldates, who, like, the Caden Finley, a true freshman who I think, Mike, you can correct if I'm wrong, that is considered someone who could be college ready at this point in his career, if he's not buried on Mike's not in there, if he's not buried on the depth chart. So like you have options of guys who can step up if one or more of the Ohio State guys flop. So I think that gives you a little bit more security with this room. I do agree that there's a pretty good gap between the floor and the ceiling here.
Going back to you, Jack, you mentioned about Chris Ash and the conspiracies about him. What conspiracies were right last year? You mentioned Greathouse, and I was just thinking back to the conspiracies that he was going to redshirt and transfer, and that he wasn't actually hurt. Between the Freeman calling the defense thing, which, like, when you look at Marcus Freeman, like, the TV's on him all the time. Did he look like he was calling plays or running a defense? Like, I don't know. Was there any conspiracies that were right, boys?
I think you're onto something here. Conspiracies tend to be proven false at some point in time.
You got to look at the source sometimes, guys. Sometimes there isn't one. It just happens. Things just pop up. But anyways, so Brett McMurphy of On3, I didn't love some of his Notre Dame trolling. Like, I've respected this guy for a super long time. I thought it was beneath him, some of the trolling that he did about Notre Dame. But I mean, I think some of these national writers and reporters can put the trolling in one bucket and the other bucket have what they actually think. So he put out today his way too early college football playoff and bowl predictions. In the first round, guys, he has Texas going UTSA playing at Texas. This is the six-pack show, so of course
we almost made Texas a whole show, Mike. You had to do it.
You mentioned Arch Manning at one point earlier in the show. That counts.
But I didn't say the T word.
Not his school. Not the T word. All right, so he's got Texas hosting UTSA in the 5-12 game, Oregon hosting Utah in the 8-9, Texas Tech hosting Oklahoma in the 6-11 game, and then Indiana, the 7 seed, hosting A&M. So the bye teams are Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, and Miami in that order. So he's got Notre Dame as the number 1 seed. So that is Notre Dame running the table, like Horka talked about in the Heisman discussion. Maybe Heisman or Carr winning the Heisman, and he's got Notre Dame beating Oregon right there. So let's stop there. He's got Notre Dame going to the semifinals. I mean, there'll be a difficult game in the 1-8, but I don't know. Is anything crazy here to this point yet, boys?
Nope. I mean, it's so hard to like forecast this in February. I feel a little bit more secure about doing that in like August, but these are the teams that we think are going to be there. And in college football, it's a little bit easier to predict like a 12-team field than it is like who are the NFL teams that are going to make the playoffs or NHL or whatever. And like we say with Notre Dame's schedule, it's very doable to go 12-0. Now, most Notre Dame fans probably think that 12-0 doesn't necessarily mean number one seed. Like I could see Notre Dame being a 2 seed or something at 12-0, but I could see them being 12-0 for sure.
Yeah, I think 12-0, depending on how they go 12-0, could pretty easily get the 1 seed. You would have the quality win over Miami. It obviously depends on what the Giants of the Big Ten and SEC do, but I could totally see them being the 1 seed of the other teams that he has making it. I don't see any that really catch my eye as ridiculous. Like we have no idea. They could be any number of Big Ten SEC teams. Could see BYU in there as a Notre Dame opponent. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Now, I'm guessing he just, for the sake of his projections, I don't know exactly what he's doing here, but he just goes chalk. So I don't know if he's not going to predict upsets or whatever, but with a semifinal of, now this would be in Miami Gardens, Florida, at the Hard Rock Stadium, Notre Dame against Miami, which would just be pretty damn epic for a college football playoff semifinals. Lots of storylines there. Of course, Miami lost the national championship game last year. In that stadium, they beat Notre Dame in that stadium. Notre Dame, according to this, would have beaten Miami earlier in the season. And then on the other side, Georgia and Ohio State. So yeah, he's got Notre Dame beating Miami and then beating Georgia and winning the national championship. It just, guys, whenever I see something like this, I just think back to when I started covering Notre Dame and just Notre Dame can never win that big game. Now the haters will just say something different about Notre Dame. They'll talk about the opt out of the bowl or whatever. But I mean, Notre Dame has proven that they can beat top quality competition. So just to see national writers like this predicting Notre Dame to have a quarterback win the Heisman or to win the national championship, it just feels like Notre Dame's come a long way for how they're perceived nationally. Do you guys agree with me? Am I crazy?
No, I agree. I like what you said about signaling a turning point regarding how Notre Dame is viewed, because like you said, for a long time, it was Notre Dame can't win the big one. Notre Dame doesn't have the size or the speed to compete with the SEC, and that was very much correct for a long time, by the way. And Notre Dame really proved that wrong, or proved that dated, I should say, because again, it was true for a solid couple decades there. But Notre Dame proved that times had changed under Marcus Freeman in 2024, or January 2025. So I think this is something that reflects that.
I think two things are true. Notre Dame has absolutely turned the corner and has become a program capable of beating the top tier programs, the ones that are always there in the end, Georgia being that. Like if this was 10 years ago, the way that Notre Dame is playing now, you would have had a better feeling like, oh, maybe Notre Dame can hang with Alabama now, because 10 years ago you knew, okay, Notre Dame's good, but not going to beat Alabama. Now it's like, okay, Alabama's of the world. Let's go play against them. Notre Dame was not in that place. Here's the other thing, though. The Georgias of the world are not equal to what they were 10 years ago either. Like, we're seeing Ole Miss beat Georgia in a playoff game to go to the semifinal and then to have a chance to go to the national title. That was not happening when Georgia was big bad Georgia or Alabama or Clemson. Like, Ole Miss, a program of Ole Miss's stature through the years, was never going to do that. So that's changed a little bit, and it's helped Notre Dame. But also Notre Dame has 100% helped itself in the sense that it's turned itself into a program that maybe even the Ole Misses of the world, and like, they don't want to play in the postseason. So a lot has changed, and Notre Dame has absolutely changed for the better.
Do you guys think the reason why that's changed, that you talked about those big bads and now we're discussing the Notre Dames and the Ole Miss and the Indiana, do you guys think that's just an NIL and portal thing? Like, is it just as simple as that? Or is it things like Saban's retired and Dabo Sweeney is, like an old man head coach now? He's stuck in the times of the old days. Like, what do you guys think?
So NIL and the portal is the root cause of it. Like, it's much harder to hoard talent for everyone right now. Like for the Georgias of the world. Ironically, it might be less harder for Notre Dame than for others, because Notre Dame has the value of the degree that gets underclassmen to stay for longer until they can get that for themselves. So that helps Notre Dame keep some of their depth. But what kind of spiraled from that is now you're seeing like, oh, if Indiana and Ole Miss can make the playoff routinely or be playoff contenders routinely, why can't we, asks Maryland? Why can't we, asks Mississippi State? Why can't we, ask any number of SEC or Big Ten programs right now? So and then those schools are now investing in their football programs as such. So I think that is kind of what's made the problem if you're one of the blue bloods right now, or the solution if you're literally anyone else, much more pronounced right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a landscape thing, because if it wasn't, Kirby Smart would still have Georgia rolling exactly like he did 5 years ago. He just can't do that. Whereas if you do game the system and figure out how to do it now and have the energy to do it and the resources, like the backing, all of that, then you could just be Kurt Signetti and build a program out of ash and be like, here we are, we're the new big bad of college football. So it's really interesting. But if you do have the energy, the resources, and all these things, that, like, I don't want to say anyone. Well, you know what? I will say anyone can win it, because Indiana just won it, and anyone can win it. But it takes a year or two of like the optimal investments all over the place, and that's coaching players, coaching staff, all that. So but anyone can win it, and that's that is different in this college football, 100%.
If you have a good head coach, an administration that is willing to spend money and money to spend, you can win. Like you don't have to have Texas Tech oil money or Oregon Phil Knight money. Like Indiana has money. Indiana spends money. Indiana is now spending more money now that Mark Cuban is backing them fully. But they weren't spending more money than everyone else during Signetti's 2 years. Like they have a great evaluator, a head coach. They spent competitively, and they had a great developer and game manager and head coach, and they won a ton of games.
All right, folks, that is going to do it for this week's Six Pack Show. If you're just tuning in and rewatching the beginning, lots of good stuff discussed. So make sure you do that. Hit thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Next live show, I believe, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Also put out a new video today talking about Notre Dame quarterback recruiting. The Irish sent out a couple new offers on Monday. Thank you all for tuning in. And as always, we will catch you guys next time.